This happened to me years ago, but it still affects me to this day. It happened when I was working at Wendy's, going to college classes during the day and working there at night. I didn't mind the work at Wendy's. It was never very busy during my shifts. The restaurant closed down at the beginning of the night, so all I had to worry about were the drive-thru orders, unless it was a Friday or Saturday night, which was our busiest days, as expected. The late night only had 2 people working, one person to take the orders and someone like me to cook them. Naturally, this meant I knew all of my coworkers pretty well, as they were the only people to talk to during downtime. I was okay with all of them except this one guy named Dylan. This guy was a creepy-looking weirdo. He had wacky-looking hair like Rick from Rick and Morty. He didn't seem to care about hygiene either. He gave me the creeps every time I saw him. I knew my shift was going to be hell every time he was my coworker for the night. I would say that he was super into me, but it's really more like he was dying to get into the pants of every girl he saw. He came on to every single girl that he took orders from in the drive-thru. It was slightly amusing to see him get shut down 99% of the time, but it wasn't so funny knowing that I was next. He truly had no concept of boundaries or empathy, and he only saw women as objects. He asked me out a million times, and I declined every single time. But the guy always thought there'd be a chance I'd reconsider, because he never stopped hitting on me. Things only got worse. The longer I worked at Wendy's, Dylan started getting more brazen, and started suggesting we have quickies at work. He would try to convince me to sleep with him multiple times a night, and each time he suggested a different spot, either the bathroom or the cooler or the kitchen. And a few times he tried to get me to do it right under the drive-thru window. I tried to be more stern and tell him that was never going to happen, but it was like I could never get it through his head that I didn't like him. I considered reporting him to the manager after every night I worked with him, but I never did. I was too scared of how he would react. The only thing worse than someone being creepy toward me was someone being mad at me. It went on like this for months, until one night, I had had enough. Dylan was absolutely egregious with his advances that night. He knew I was a timid person, and he was taking full advantage of it. He knew I hadn't told anyone about anything he did. At one point during the shift, he came up to the grill and tried to grab my hand while saying one of his usual pickup lines. I swatted his hand away and almost slapped him across the face with a spatula, but I held myself back and cussed him out.
Don't touch me! Just leave me alone! God, you're such a creep!
Wow, someone's a little spicy tonight. Spicy like the spicy chicken sandwich. But I bet you taste better, sweetheart.
Dylan shrugged it off after seeing a customer come up to the intercom, so he went back to the window. A couple hours passed, and Dylan was oddly quiet. I started to think that I had finally done it. I had finally gotten Dylan off my back. Gone were the days of having to hide from him in the bathroom and dreading when there was no work to distract him. Later, past midnight, we had some downtime. I noticed I was low on some things that I would definitely need to get through the rest of my shift, so I went into the cooler to get some inventory. I was crouched down with my back to the door, looking for the right thing when I heard the door open and close again. I froze for a moment, as I was genuinely shitting bricks. My heart began racing instantly. I didn't want to turn around. I knew it had to be Dylan. I then slowly turned my head around, and saw Dylan standing over me, his face deranged like a psycho.
What are you doing here? You should get back to the window.
Chill out, baby. I've been waiting a long time for this, so I'll make it quick. He pinned me to the floor as I screamed for help.
Help! Somebody help me! Get off me!
After a few moments of sheer horror, I managed to kick and scream and fight my way out of his grasp. I was able to hit him in a vulnerable spot and get away, bursting through the cooler door and running to the customers in line for help. They called the police and Dylan was later arrested. He kept saying it was a misunderstanding and that everything was consensual, but there were quite a few factors that made it obvious to the cops that he was lying, mainly the fact that he had covered the camera in the cooler with a box, as well as a few other cameras in the building. He was clearly anticipating what he did to me, and was lucky enough that it didn't get as far as he could have. However, I still feel the scars from that horrifying night. The story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a Wendy's employee who was arrested after a forcible altercation with a female coworker inside the fast food restaurant's cooler. The alleged incident occurred on a Sunday morning in Pompano Beach, Florida. A 25-year-old man named Tressel Huffman followed the woman into a cooler and proceeded to force himself on her as she tried to push him off. The incident only came to an end when the suspect failed to get it up. The female worker was then able to break free. She ran across the street and called the cops. After reviewing surveillance footage, authorities said that they witnessed Huffman place a box in front of the camera that faced the cooler. The manager of the location told detectives that all employees are aware that blocking cameras is strictly forbidden. According to the warrant, Huffman was inconsistent in his interview with the police and claimed the encounter was consensual. Huffman was later arrested and charged with the attack, along with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and battery. He was taken to jail and is being held without bond.